Come, let us explore this dawn's meditation class and group practice, that we too could meditate like a Jedi. This morning's lit lesson is rooted in the 34th passage of the meditation classic, Unwavering Victory Banner, composed oh so many centuries ago by the great Buddhist reformer Vajra. Together let us relaxingly recite. By means of contrived and wrathful conduct in the practice of Maha-yoga, there is nothing at all to be attained. When one joins the A to the Pa in the practice of Anu-yoga, one contrives to experience the bliss of illusion, thus sinking deeper into duality. It is useful to remember that amongst those who teach Dzogchen, which is also known as Ati-yoga, it is described that there are three categories of practice. Number one, Maha-yoga, that deals with ritual and visualization and invocations and worship. Number two, Anu-yoga, that uses channels, winds, drops, visualization, and invocation in the form of one-syllable mantras. And number three, Ati-yoga, which is simply the practice of noticing and relaxing while passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system. A recurring theme in this text is that, and which makes it deliciously subversive, is this. Not only is the practice of simply noticing and relaxing in cooperation with our inhalation and exhalation the most efficient path to enlightenment. It's the only path. And the remaining two paths are a hindrance. Now, this teaching was so controversial, it appears to have been rejected subtly by his direct disciples. When we look at the teachings, the translations of the ancient texts of Garab Dorje, and we look at the translations of the ancient texts of his direct students, we can see that they ignored his teachings and contradicted his teachings, which to me is heartbreaking. As an autistic, I have the gift/inconvenience of pattern recognition, which means it's very, very difficult for me to belong to a group because I cannot help but find the bullshit. I don't want to. It's uncomfortable. It's really inconvenient. But most autistics were just little pattern recognition machines. And every teacher I've encountered who embraces Maha-yoga and Anu-yoga in addition to the practice of Ati-yoga insists that the path is difficult, that it requires great effort and requires great time. Whereas those who only practice Ati-yoga say the opposite, that it's easy, that it's quick, and that it requires no sacrifice. My first teachers in the Tibetan tradition meant well. but they were the unthinking acolytes of those who were, as I will describe in a moment, of those who were rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and good-hearted and lazy-minded though they were, they just blindly accepted what they were taught. Which means in the current state of Tibetan Buddhism, if you don't want to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and would rather be flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, kind, people take a rather dim view of you, which is very sad and very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. So let's return to this morning's teaching text, shall we? Well, let's try to at least. Let's see. I'm going to tap this button, going to tap button 14. So in this first portion of this passage, we're taught that the practice of Mahayoga is fruitless. In other passages, he describes the practice of invocation and ritual and visualization and recitation as being like children's games. In the second half of the same passage, we're told that the practice of Anuyoga is nothing more than a contrivance to experience the illusion of bliss. When we, and which is us, what's the word I'm looking for? Sanctimoniously swan diving into the deep end of the metaphoric swimming pool of duality. Think of it this way. And for me to explain this, I really should take a moment to review the basics. Every time we inhale, we have evolved to automatically access the sympathetic nervous system, the middle bit of our spinal cord, which has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. It has evolved to help us to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Now, this is an important distinction. This is the opposite of relying upon the front part of our brain, specifically the medial prefrontal cortex, to actively, rigidly indulge our controlling tendencies and specifically choose what to experience. And instead, we're just going with the flow. We're noticing vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Well, why not just choose what we feel? Why not just, become, what's it called? The captain of our ship, of our destiny. Well, problem with this is that we evolved to use the portion, these regions of our prefrontal cortex sparingly, intermittently, occasionally. And when we overuse them, we present with symptoms of depression. And what's the word I'm looking for? We trigger our amygdala, which is the seat of both anxiety and aggression. However, when we cooperate passively with our spinal cord, we calm our amygdala, experience great peace, and gently stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons and harnesses the power, harnesses our aversion and avarice, transforming them into compassion and love. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, actually, no, I skipped a bit. So every time we inhale, we're wired to access our sympathetic nervous system, which helps us to notice all manner of phenomena, from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque, including the full spectrum of human perceptions, emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings. But what are we to do with all that stuff that we notice? Every time we exhale, we are already wired to automatically access the parasympathetic nervous system, which is just a fancy way of describing the end bits of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and less defining. And if you prefer figures of speech, it could help us to physically relax and mentally release that which we noticed during our previous inhalation, to the point that it could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, feels non-graspable to the hand. Now, let's return to the subject of duality. We've all evolved as a matter of survival to chase bliss and flee pain. However, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever bliss or pain we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as if they were melting into the simplicity of just sensation. Performing all these weird things in the name of chasing bliss. Visualizations or invoking one-syllable mantras. These things reinforce the habit of pushing and pulling. Whereas simply noticing whatever comes up and simply noticing whatever comes up and relaxing into their non-graspable nature helps us to break that habit, frees us from the tyranny of that habit. And that is the liberation that the Buddha offers us. Having completed this morning's opening lesson, we could now shift gears. It is Ahsoka Tano Thursday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Sende Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So what I want to do right now, well, let me see here. As I look at this text, I have to wonder, is it sitting properly on the page? And the answer is no. So what I think I'll do is quickly add a line. Check the layout. And then edit it. And see if that doesn't help. Whoops, wrong button. Let's go back to button 9. Yes, it seems to fit better on the page now. Yay! Okay. So, quick review. The essence of mindfulness is as follows. Well, actually, the most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this each time we feel our diaphragm pull down as we inhale. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease each time we feel our diaphragm relax back into its upright position. It's as simple as that. Doing so will gently guide our posture to a more sustainable aspect, which will make sitting easier and easier to practice. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 5 minutes or so. The most efficient way to keep track of our first collection of 144 inhalations is to rest the big knuckle at the base, I should say the first knuckle at the base of our right index finger upon the tip of our left index finger, palms up in our lap. The easiest way to keep track of our next 12 inhalations is upon the first, second, and third creases of each of the 4 fingers of our right hand. We can use the 3 sets of creases upon each of the 4 fingers of our left hand to count 12 sets of 12 inhalations each. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 5 minutes or so. In essence, the most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently let me rephrase it. The most efficient way to passively cooperate with both facets of our autonomic nervous system is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during each inhalation. Simply watching the antics of mind is the essence of mindfulness. The most efficient way to cooperate, to passively cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system, the tips of our spinal cord, is to silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during each exhalation. For relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature is the essence of meditation. During this morning's opening lesson, we explored how the greatest Buddhist reformer, Vajra, taught that it is the most efficient way to master the Buddha's teachings, or simply by practicing the seventh fold and the eighth fold path of the Buddha's eightfold path of mindfulness and meditation. And then by simply doing so, we could rapidly master his path in as little as 7 days. The majority of practitioners of Tibetan Buddhism have deliberately or accidentally ignored his advice, although they consider him the founder of their path, and practice ritualism and invocation and austerity and the like. And sometimes lamas will strive to justify this and say, well, we do this so we can practice magic and help people with their mundane needs because we're so compassionate. However, the author of the root text that I teach from explained or inferred that the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the barometer of our practice is this: love. The highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived, and it is the effortless byproduct of our practice of mindfulness and meditation. So we do not have to force or contrive our love through prayers and invocations and visualizations. Second, when it comes to helping people, when it comes time to invoking protection or manifesting benefit, it is inferred that we're already wired in the survival regions of our brain. We're already wired to reach for safety and pleasure and praise and fame and flee. We're already wired to flee lack and pain and scorn and shame. So we don't have to contrive these things. We don't have to force these things. The same way we don't have to force ourselves to breathe. We don't have to force our heart to beat. We don't have to force our eyes to blink. These are gifts of our autonomic nervous system, hardwired for our survival. Thus, As we notice during our inhalations, there will be times when we notice perils or we notice benefits, real or imagined. And there will be times when we consequently relax them and relax our grasp upon them as we exhale. And in so doing, we get out of our own way and set in motion the falling domino-like series of events that provide for that safety or provide for that abundance that we are already hardwired to seek on behalf of ourselves and on behalf of others. Maslow taught of a 4-stage path to mastery, and it sounds kind of redundant. There is ignorance of ignorance, awareness of ignorance, awareness of mastery, and ignorance of mastery. Or to put it plainly, when we get so good at something that we're able to do it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively, that's mastery. As children, there was a point in our childhood where we found using the toilet, or brushing our teeth, or tying our shoes, or riding our back to be an insurmountable task. Later in our childhood, we got so good at those things that we could do them, you guessed it, spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. When I was in high school and I tried to learn how to type, because of my coordination difficulties due to ADHD, and because of my resistance to change due to autism, I had a remarkably difficult time. It took me a very long time to get good at typing. Not perfect, not great, but good enough. It took me a very long time. My disabilities metaphorically caused me to get in my own way. And so what Prahe Vajra was, what the founder of Dzogchen was inferring is that by simply noticing and relaxing in harmony with our inhalation and exhalation every 12 hours or so, we condition ourselves to get out of our own way. Therefore, in the face of peril, we don't need to invoke a real or imagined entity. We don't need to lay out offerings. We don't need to do bowing. Although exercise is very good after sitting for an hour in meditation, we don't need to ritualistically exercise. We don't need to recite mantras or prayers. It's enough to simply notice the scary thing as we breathe in and relax as we breathe out. I live in the States of America, which has turned its slow creep towards fascism into an outright sprint. And it's a scary place to live right now on behalf of ourselves and our neighbors. Totally scary. So all I need to do is notice that fear as I breathe in, relax as I breathe out, and ways of coping with it, with the peril of my circumstance, will become more and more evident. Similarly, one could notice desirable things for oneself and one's neighbors. Safety, health, healthy relationships, respect. And instead of chasing them, it's enough to allow ourselves to spontaneously notice them as we breathe in, and physically relax as we breathe out, And thus we will find ourselves getting out of our own way. The sixth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is arguably the effortless effort of going with the flow. The more we practice awareness and release, the more our choices, utterances, and deeds will flow effortlessly, not from scattered spontaneity, but from centered spontaneity. That is the ultimate path of blessing. That is the ultimate path of fulfillment. Change is an inevitability. Every child can recognize that seasons come and seasons go. Birthdays come and birthdays go. We can recognize the waxing and the waning of the moon every month, the rising and the setting of the sun every day, the swelling and the sinking of our diaphragm with every breath, every moment. Ever changing when in all there is nothing permanent to grasp. Pleasures and pains come and go. Health and illness come and go. And the like. Calamity and good fortune come and go. By cooperating with the supercomputer of our autonomic nervous system, we will find the most sustainable way to intermittently access the parts of our brain responsible for focus and analysis. By cooperating with our autonomic nervous system, we will find the most sustainable way to weather the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And when the most profound act of impermanence finally befalls us, the death of our body, which could understandably feel like that first crest on the top of a roller coaster, by bringing our habit of awareness and release with us through the process, our exit from the play of life can drip with the peace and the love that make life meaningful. Let us continue meditating. It is not our job to actively evangelize, to knock on people's door on a Saturday morning, rouse them out of bed, and instigate an argument about some sort of fundamentalist doctrine. Simply by using mindfulness and meditation to master the paths of peace and love, of contentment and compassion, People will naturally be drawn to us and our practice the way moths are drawn to a porch light. I need to adjust my legs. Oof. For my friends who were raised with Christianity, allow me to remind you of certain Bible passages. In the Sermon on the Mount described in the book, the Gospel of Matthew, we see the Lord's Prayer, and in it we see the line, "Thy will be done," which is a way of going with the flow, going with the divine flow. Instead of pretending you know more than God or you're more loving than God and that you need to coach him somehow. Thy will be done. And you might say, but do we not read the line in the same prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread"? It could be argued that that is a way of telling or inferring to those listening to the sermon that we need not exhaust ourselves forever chasing goals and riches. It's enough to be content with sustenance. That idea is echoed in the book of James, where we read, "Do not ask that you may spend it on your desires and your follies. Ask only for wisdom." So we see, when we look at those two passages, we see a radical path of contentment and acceptance. That it's not our job to be like a Pac-Man in a 1980s video game, forever hungry for riches and power and prestige and fame. It's enough to practice contentment and the wisdom that comes from acceptance. Let's continue. So we see that these ideas are not unique to Buddhism. They are not unique to Taoism. They are not unique to Christianity. Carl Gustav Jung taught of the collective unconscious, that ideas come to those who are ready for them, regardless of location and time. It could be argued that evolutionarily speaking, we have evolved specifically for acceptance and kindness. And when we cooperate with our central nervous system, That is how we are. So the task for anyone who wishes to be a healthy, well-adjusted adult is to passively cooperate with the mechanisms of their autonomic nervous system. To be the content and compassionate person that your dog already thinks you are. Welcome to the remainder of this morning's live stream. Allow me to remind you that the essence of mindfulness can be practiced by silently and mentally reciting the demonstrative pronoun this each time we feel our diaphragm pull down. And that the essence of meditation can be practiced as simply as silently and mentally reciting the one-syllable verb ease each time we feel our diaphragm relax back up into its resting position. Excuse me. In other words, as we breathe in, we can passively notice the play or the antics of mind, and as we breathe out, we can relax into mind's ultimately non-graspable nature. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's dusk meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.